Well, welcome back, everybody, to this edition this week of Unshackled, where we kind of talk about the topics of those things that have happened in our life that are blocking the flow of the Spirit of God in our lives and keeping us from receiving all the blessings and the joy that God really has for us. And so just a quick plug, this is the Unshackled small group workbook, and it's a video/workbook small group curriculum. It'd be great for churches. It's a great curriculum for new Christians in discipling. So we're talking about different topics normally that are in Unshackled and dealing with discipleship. But today I invited a special guest from TM staff. He's the head of our counseling department, and his name's Jeff Dolce, and he's a retired clinician. He's a clinical psychologist. He was ordained in 2023. And is currently a minister with us at Transformation Ministries. He's the head of the counseling department. He's a teacher. He's a counselor. He pretty much does everything at TM. He got his degree in medical psychology at the University of Alabama in 1985, and he completed his internship at the University of Mississippi Medical Center. And he was at UAB's Department of Medicine and in private practice for 38 years before we got him from out of the clinician world into the realm of the spiritual here at TM. And we're so glad that he's with us. But I invited him to come and just share about the topic of trauma. It is such a big deal, not a big deal, it's such a common thing these days, and it's so prevalent in our country. There's so many things going on that understanding trauma and understanding how it affects us, how it affects our spiritual life, how it affects our family life and every aspect of our life. I just want to welcome Jeff Dolce on board here for this. We're going to do 2 sessions, so we've got a lot to cover. And I thought I knew a little bit about it till I started talking to you, and I thought, okay, I got to just let the real deal come in and talk about it. So I'm just so glad that you had the time to come and be with us. I just want to jump right into it and get into this discussion.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a topic that a lot of people know that it's a bad thing, but they really don't understand it very well. So I think just to kick this off is when people think about trauma, they usually just think about PTSD, or they've heard about PTSD. That's a more common term now since all the things with the war. But PTSD, I guess, has been going for a long time now that we're seeing it.
Yeah.
So what is PTSD in the layman's terms, or
in layman's terms, it's your response, your total response, spiritually, psychologically, emotionally, behaviorally, physically, to an overwhelming experience. And you think about it, in one way of thinking about it, it's your response. It's an abnormal response. A normal response to an abnormal life situation.
Right.
It's something that you should never have experienced, and it produces a response in you at multiple levels. It's of the anxiety conditions, it's the most complex of all of them. Like you said, it's been around for a long time. The first recorded sort of description of PTSD was in the Great Fires of London decades ago. And then you see it again described in Germany during a physician there with work-related injuries in World War I. You're a veteran. World War I and World War II, they called it battle fatigue.
Or shell shock.
Shell shock. Yeah. Those were 2 of the terms that were used. As a diagnosis, it first came about in, I think it was 1981 or 82, whenever DSM-3 came out. And since then, there have been DSM-3, that's the Diagnostic Statistical Manual.
Doctor stuff.
Yeah, doctor stuff. But there've been 4 editions since then, and they've changed the criteria every time. So it's the actual symptoms of it, depending on when you look at it and talk about it, vary. But it's that total response that you have to something horrendous. Right. It could be a war trauma, or it could be a rape. It could be abuse. It could be.
It's a negative experience, though, right?
A very negative experience. Right. Yeah.
And when you think about people that are struggling with PTSD, I think a lot of times, we, at least being a veteran, we talk about people coming back from war with PTSD, but in reality, PTSD is covering the full gamut of everything. What are some examples of people that you worked with that had PTSD issues that weren't necessarily generated traumas from war?
Well, there have been a lot over the years. I mean, you commonly see people that had physical abuse as a child or sexual trauma as a child or women who've been raped, but it's so much more than that. I've seen prison guards that were caught in riots and beaten. I've seen people stabbed in prisons. I've seen police officers that have been shot or beat up. I've seen firefighters that have been caught in buildings that caved in and burned. I've seen car accidents, truckers that have been in car accidents, miners that have been caught in cave-ins.
Yeah.
So there's just a whole range of them.
Yeah.
Here in Birmingham, there's been a steady stream of folks related to tornadoes that have come through and devastated their house or taken things. After Katrina, there was an influx of people from New Orleans to this area, and there was a period where I saw lots of folks that were survivors of Katrina.
I can imagine that if you were living in a house when a tornado hits it and you survive that would be a pretty traumatic experience.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah. Wow.
But PTSD doesn't always fit these big, tremendous things that happen. It can be more subtle things that cause problems in terms of just people that have car accidents and then are afraid to drive.
Right.
And
so in my experience in my 20-some years of counseling, I mean, there's lots of people that have negative experiences or trauma experiences, and they seem to do okay.
Yeah.
And then there's another group of people that have the same type of experience, and man, they are just not okay. And we kind of put the PTSD or label in there, or start talking to them about that. So tell us a little bit about what is happening in a person when PTSD is starting to affect their life.
Well, let me respond.
Did I ask too much of a question there?
No, my brain went in two directions at the same time. What you were talking about in the first part about people who don't develop symptoms, right?
Okay.
I guess the first place to start is all trauma produces something, but not all trauma produces PTSD. Okay, so you can have a traumatic event and affect you, but it doesn't rise to the diagnostic level of all the symptoms that you need to have a textbook disorder. But that doesn't mean that the things that happen after that aren't significant in your life and causing a disruption.
Right.
But then there are people that experience trauma, as you said, that don't even get symptoms. Combat veterans that have actually gone through firefights. Vietnam, it was the statistics indicate it's about 70% of combat people that were in active firefights develop it, but that's 30% that don't.
Right.
And it's similar with women who've been raped and across the board. And so what you mentioned about that, they're protective things that happen. And I don't know if you want to get into that now or next week when we talk about sort of interventions. But,
let's talk about that. Let's just kind of help define what we're talking about here.
The short answer is they're things that are protective. They're things that if you develop good basic trust and have appropriate touch and those things that actually facilitate things in your brain, that changes in the brain structure that protect you and insulate you against the effects of trauma. So some people are more insulated. Trauma is accumulative, so if you have a lot of events in early life, neglect, abandonment, betrayals, rejection, those sorts of things set the stage, or small traumas set the stage for having more symptoms with bigger events down the road.
Yeah, I think the question I'm thinking about for people that are watching is what's going on if somebody's struggling with PTSD? What's happening in their brain that the other person's not experiencing? Why are they struggling with those memories?
Well, the brain's a complex. There's it's estimated 80 to 100 billion with a B brain cells.
Yeah.
And they form these really complex networks in the brain. And so that link your emotions, your memories, your responses,
Right.
and all those things together. But it also mediates your body's stress response in terms of releasing adrenaline and cortisol that then affects the brain. And so what happens when you're in a brief, we can talk about it in more detail if you want, but in brief, when you're in a traumatic situation, that your body has an exaggerated response. And a part of that, the brain releases and floods the brain with norepinephrine, which then locks, because it's supercharged, the things that are coming into your memory and your emotions and all those things get kind of locked in at a very intense level. So what you see with that is certain kind of cues and things that are associated with that trauma then elicit extreme fear and panic usually,
Right.
and tendencies to avoid, and it disrupts memory in terms of you can get fragmented memories,
Right.
and forget things, and
I heard a guy one time, or I read it, or I don't know, maybe I just deduced it myself in a short way for military guys coming back with PTSD. It's like they have this trauma event that's imprinted into their brain. It's a memory, and then they were exercising that fight or flight or all the things that go along with that. And because it was such a imprinting, that's like a train that takes things that happen to us and then files it in our brain in a different section that's just a memory. It's not real. It's just something that happened to you in the past that you can recall, but you have control over that recall. But the train goes off the track before it can get it to that place in the brain. So that now that I'm out of the war and I'm back here in the States, every time I get something that triggers a sound, a crash, a backfire of a car, or those kinds of things, it takes me, my brain gets actuated, and it's like all of a sudden I'm there in that place. That brain, it didn't get filed as a memory. It's like I'm there, and you react that way. And even in your subconscious level, I mean, I've talked to veterans that have been home with their wife, and they wake up on top of them, choking them, because they're dreaming, or, having tremors and nightmare, and it's so scary, especially for the poor wife.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So all those memories are. So what happens with that is in the hippocampus is where your memories are primarily stored. A lot of places are connected, but it's primarily in the hippocampus. It's supercharged, and so what happens? Everything that that are coming in through your senses during a trauma are going in and getting encoded, and they get encoded and locked into that emotion that's associated with it. And so you'll see things that signal trauma very clearly, like somebody pointing a gun at you or those kinds of things. But then you'll have, I call them false alarms. So, for example, a woman who's been raped and then she's having panic attacks in office because the guy that walks by her coworker is wearing the same kind of cologne.
Yeah.
Cologne doesn't. Cologne is not a signal of danger, but it was paired with that trauma, and that emotion and that memory are locked in together, and then what that does is there's a hypersensitivity to those memories, and that triggers the amygdala, and that triggers that whole fight or flight response, and just action responses like
that. Brings up, you said something there that brings up a good question that I've been wanting to ask you. And what's the difference between somebody that's, and I hear this a lot with the 20-something young people, 18 to 25 to 30-ish bracket, that they have panic attacks. They're having panic attacks. What's the difference between a panic attack and PTSD, or are they the same, or what's different?
Okay, so it's a little confusing because there's an anxiety condition called panic disorder. Okay, just like there's phobias, panic disorder, generalized anxiety, post-traumatic stress. They're all anxiety disorders that are separate.
Right.
But you think of panic attack as a symptom. It's like you can have a fever with the flu, you can have a fever with an infection, you can have a fever.
Yeah, okay.
Right, so a panic attack itself is just a symptom. You have panic attacks and generalized anxiety. You have panic attacks and phobias. You have panic attacks and panic disorder, of course. And so, but what a panic attack is when the amygdala, as I mentioned, it's part of the brain that's geared to function with anger and anxiety. It's kind of like my dog laying around the house. He pays attention to all the noises and all the sounds and what's
Right.
going on. But if he hears something that he is unusual to him, he stands up and gets on alert and then starts barking.
Yep.
And so the amygdala.
I got 3 dogs that are in that state all the time at my house.
So the
these days.
amygdala is taking in all this information. It's taking in sensory input from the thalamus. It's taking in memories from the hippocampus. It's taking in imagination and your thoughts that are encoded. And if the stuff comes in and it gets the amygdala aroused and that dog barks, then what it does is it triggers a cascade of things that releases a lot of adrenaline out of your adrenal glands on your kidneys, and then cortisol, the stress hormone. But when you dump too much adrenaline all at once, it triggers the body, the fight or flight response. And so you can have a panic attack anytime there's something that is significant enough to trigger that cascade.
Right.
And so, but it happens in a lot of different conditions.
But it seems like, a lot of adults or a lot of people will have anxiety, or you're worried about your son graduating from college, you're worried about how you're going to pay the bills, and there's an anxiety there, but it's not a panic attack.
Right.
So the panic attack to me is when people get debilitated, like it's affecting their ability to cope with the life at the moment and whatever. What's the difference between it?
The nervous system goes to every part of your body, so that there isn't anything in you that can't be a symptom of anxiety. Right? From rashes and hives to stomach to headaches to those things. And so when you get a lot of worry and stress, people feel a lot of things, and they can be debilitating in and of themselves. But when you have something that elevates there's a normal stress response to something that you're worried about.
Yeah.
And so that whole system is activated, but it's only activated partially. But when it reaches a certain threshold, there's so much adrenaline, it triggers a massive response in the body.
Right.
And so that you get shortness of breath and hyperventilation.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's what everyone was associating with
dizziness
panic
and
attack.
chest pains, and they spin up really quick in just matters of seconds. They can last 10 or 15 minutes, and they're very debilitating when they happen and very scary.
As a doctor, and if you're around, not you, but if a person maybe that's watching this is around someone that's starting to go into a panic attack, is there something you can do to help just that person, not being a doctor, just the average person, to calm them down? Or is there things you can say or do to get them out of that?
Yeah. Once it's been triggered, it's got to run its course.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you've dumped all this adrenaline. It's like having too much coffee,
Yeah.
right? You're going to be jittery until your body burns it up. And the same thing happens with a fight or flight response. You're going to have that adrenaline until your body burns it up. But there are things you can do. Again, it's your body's natural response to either fight or run. So the worst thing you can do is just sit still because then everything you notice it more. So getting up and moving around can be useful. You don't have to exercise hard, but just walking and doing sort of paced breathing, regular breathing, and moving around can help.
So if you're the person that's trying to help the panic attack victim, you'd want to get them up, get them moving around. Hey, take a deep breath.
Just breathe normal.
Breathe normal. Just kind of stay
slow,
calm.
Rhythmic.
Yeah.
Just okay. It's okay. Just walk a little bit
Yeah.
and reassure them that it 10 or 15 minutes to burn it up usually.
Right.
So it's like having a migraine or a GI bug. You just kind of have to ride it out until it happens. But you can be reassuring and encouraging, and you can remind them. People a lot of times have fears that, I'm going to die, particularly if people have had events like heart attacks and those things.
Right.
Then they think, I'm dying again. So you just have to reassure them. If if they have a history of those things, you need to help them get to medical assistance.
Right.
But generally, with just a panic attack, it's just calming them down and helping them feel secure while it burns up.
So when we think about PTSD and we think about trauma, I know many people that are maybe watching us in this discussion know somebody that's got the night tremors, that has said, I think I have PTSD. Maybe they're working with the VA if they happen to be military, or they're working with clinicians, with psychologists or whatever. What we're going to talk about in our next session is kind of like, okay, we've talked about the problems and the issues and things like that. Well, that's great. If you're struggling with it out there watching this, that's great. You already kind of know what those are because you've been through it. Yeah. But is there a solution, and is there an answer? And what we're going to talk about next time is a little bit, what's the difference between the clinical side versus the spiritual side of dealing with these things? And is there hope? Is there a solution to this? And we don't ever want to leave anybody hanging about whether or not Jesus can be the answer to bring healing. And I've worked with so many vets that were struggling with PTSD and prayed with them and ministered to them to where they just don't have the tremors anymore. They didn't have it, and they thought that they were going to have it for the rest of their lives.
Right. PTSD is very debilitating because there are recurrent memories like that play over in your head like a movie. There are nightmares. Yep. There's avoidance of activities, yep. Fear, panic episodes, and all those things. But you're right. It's God designed us. God designed us as this complex being with this intricate brain. We're fearfully and wonderfully made, Scripture says. Yeah. And he's done beautiful things. There's actually a place in the prefrontal cortex of our brain that gets activated with forgiveness that works downward on this whole system to stop the panic and all the symptoms. Yeah. And so there's some beautiful things that God wired into our brains to help us heal, and He's the healer. And
so we just have to learn how to tap into that. Right. And you've seen so many successes and helped so many people over the years with the trauma issues and PTSD. So we're gonna kind of wrap it up here right now. If this has been interesting for you, we just ask you to share this podcast with friends. We're trying to get the word of Transformation Ministries and Unshackled podcast out to everybody. So just like it and share it and all the stuff that social media people do with these kinds of things. And we'll be back next time, and we're going to talk about the answer. How can I get out of the prison of PTSD, or even a topic called moral injury? We want to talk about that as well. So thanks, Jeff. I'll see you next week.
All right, great.
All right.